They told her she was cursed, told her no man should ever see her face. But the true curse wasn't sewn onto her flesh. It was carved into the hearts of the men who once called her sister. Men who bore a badge, then sold honor for bullets, land, and silence. The day she ripped the sack off her head in the middle of the entire damn town, even the wind stopped. It was July in Moab, Utah, the type of summer where the air vibrated like a hive, hot and heavy with secrets. Henry Mallister, a reserved rancher not quite 60, was returning from Cedar Hollow, wagon loaded with oats, sweat seeping through his hat, and nothing but phantoms for companions. Then he spotted her, standing stiff as a gravestone in the middle of the dirt road, a burlap sack over her head, raw twine binding her hands. No wagon in sight, no tracks, no noise, only a silence so thick, Henry instinctively straightened in the saddle. Then she said softly yet audible, "Please, don't look under the sack." Henry wasn't the sort to snoop, but he recognized pain when he saw it. The kind that doesn't show. Whatever tormented this girl wasn't fear. It was shame, the sort you get from someone else and are made to bear. He didn't ask her questions, didn't touch her. He just pulled the wagon back slow, spread out a blanket, and said in a low, calm voice, "You can ride if you want." She got in without a word. No look, no shake, just silence. And that's how it started. Not with blood, not with screams, but with silence so heavy it caused the dust to hang heavier in the air. She didn't eat that evening, didn't drink, didn't request anything. She huddled in the barn's back corner and disappeared into the shadows. Henry left her a blanket, folded and placed beside the hay, and a biscuit. The next morning, both remained untouched. But the sack, ever so slightly, had moved. Enough that he had seen the curve of her jaw, bruised, swollen, and cut so deeply, as if someone had worked on it with wicked accuracy. He didn't ask. He didn't have to. Some tales shout loudest when they're not spoken. 3 days went by. Rachel never spoke, never budged, never ate or drank, just remained swathed in darkness. But Henry didn't push. He understood better. Some wounds, if you prod too early, never heal. Then, early on the 4th morning, before the sun had even touched the hills, he noticed something different. The biscuit was gone, the blanket neatly folded, and beside it a small loop of black thread. He didn't know what it meant, but it felt like a whisper in the dark. Not a cry for help, just a quiet voice saying, "I'm still here. I'm not finished yet." Later that same day, as Henry mended the fence behind the barn, a boy appeared. Couldn't have been more than 10. Barefoot, legs caked in dried mud, and eyes far too old for his face. He didn't speak, didn't knock, just stood there, still as a shadow. Henry saw him across the yard, wiped the sweat from his brow, and approached calmly. "You know the girl in the barn?" he whispered. The boy remained silent, just looked toward the barn, then back at Henry. "She asked me not to look underneath the sack," Henry said. The boy's lower lip quivered. He dipped his head and spoke up, barely audible. "She's not ready." Then he was gone, back into the underbrush without a clue. No prints, just silence. That evening, Henry couldn't sleep, not out of fear, but due to the bulk in his chest. This girl hadn't been hiding. She'd been erased, and someone out there intended to keep her that way. Then something changed. Rachel no longer huddled in the darkness. She sat up straight on a rusty wooden crate, shoulder to the lantern light with her back ramrod straight, her hands motionless. The sack was gone. And when Henry looked at her face, it wasn't what he was afraid of. It wasn't shame. It wasn't horror. It was history, scars, burns, memories etched on skin. Her lip had healed awry. The bruise down her jaw resembled she'd been kicked by a mule. She hadn't been concealing beauty. She was concealing evidence. The kind that screams louder than words ever would. She didn't apologize, didn't explain. She just gave Henry the cold, hard stare and said, "Rachel Boone," not like she was proud to mention the name, but like she was reclaiming it from someone who sought to remove it. When she talked, it wasn't the voice of a victim. It was the voice of a witness. like a person standing on the gallows, outlining the truth with no flinch and no fear. Her brothers Wade, Cyrus, and Bennett. 3 names steeped in guilt. Same blood, different monsters. They raised her, fed her, and then bound her and sold her off. Not for cash. For a rifle stock and a worthless piece of ground. One of them had even once worn a badge. Stood tall on church steps, smiled at neighbors, and uttered such things as protect and serve. And yet, in the shadows of moonlight, that same man bound a burlap sack about his sister's head and muttered, "She'll get a good price if they don't inspect too closely." It was Caleb, a near 10-year-old boy, who cut her free when no one was looking. She ran until her feet were bloody, until her throat was parched from dust. And somehow that road took her right to Henry's wagon. But the world doesn't remain silent for long. Word spread. Some whispered Henry was hiding a witch. Others whispered he'd gone crazy, allowing some devil girl to sleep in his barn. It didn't help that he never touched her, never questioned her, never even yelled. Rumors don't concern themselves with the truth. They ride hard and fast. And then came worse than whispers, hooves, quiet ones, too numerous to be disregarded. They rode up at sunset time. For riders. No dust, no greetings, no acting like anything other than trouble. Even the dogs fell silent. Even the wind died. Henry was outside the back door repairing a fence when he sensed the change in the atmosphere. That creepy quiet just before something shatters. Cyrus and Wade were making their way around the barn, hunters sniffing the perimeter of flame. Wade swung off his horse first, still paced as if he owned the place, despite his badge having long since oxidized. No greeting, no effect, just hard glares. Then Cyrus growled, "We know she's in there." Henry didn't blink, just gazed off in the direction of the barn and then back at them. "She's not yours anymore," he said. The ensuing laughter wasn't the kind that results in joy. It was the kind that appears before blood is shed. "You think a little dust and rope qualifies as what she is?" One of them snarled. "You think tucking her away in a barn protects her?" Then the punch landed. Quick, savage. Henry didn't notice, just had the dirt in his mouth, the ringing in his ears, the world spinning on its side. But what shook him back was Rachel. She emerged from the barn. No sack, no fear. Scars, bare feet, and an unbroken spine. She did not scream, did not plead. She clutched the burlap bag in her hand as proof, then let it fall at their feet. "This," she said, "is what you gave me. Not love, not safety, just this." The townspeople had assembled by then, attracted by the sizzling tension and hushed shame. Some gasped, some averted their faces, but she did not move. "I ain't yours," Rachel spat, her words piercing the heat. "They didn't like my voice, didn't like my questions. So they tried to silence me, told me I was cursed." Her chin came up. "I'm not cursed. I'm done hiding." There wasn't a word, not even from the horses. They shifted, awkward, like some ancient thing had creaked open under the Utah sky. And in that instant, shame started creeping back to the shoulders that had worn it. Rachel did not wait for thunder. She did not make a speech. She did not wave farewell. She merely repaired the squeaky hinge on the barn door, demonstrated to Henry how to mend a shirt with even, silent stitches, and one morning before the rooster woke, she was gone. No wagon in sight, no prints on the porch, only a creased note on the crate where she'd slept. "You saw me and remained." Henry read it twice, then pocketed it in the inside pocket of the coat he hadn't worn in decades. He didn't weep, but he didn't touch his coffee that morning either. Months went by. Then one night, there was a preacher passing through. Told him he'd come from a dusty little town south of there. Spoke of a woman who was teaching deaf children to sew. Scarred face, steady hands, gentle smile. Never wore a veil, not even to church. Henry didn't ask her name. He didn't need to. The barn remained. So did the knot of dark thread she left behind, fastened tight on the sill. And occasionally, when the wind blew just so, Henry could have sworn he heard her laughter. Quiet but true. And he remembered that day. The day she stood tall, let the sack fall and took back her name. For some scars remain on the skin. Some plant themselves deep. But neither of them gets to choose who you become. What you care about is what you do next. Do you remain small? Or do you rise up? Do you stay silent? Or do you speak up? And perhaps you're not wrapped up in rope and burlap. But perhaps, just perhaps, there's something you've been carrying around for too long. Something someone gave you. Something that never was yours to begin with. Perhaps today's the day you lay it down. So, ask you this. Have you ever allowed shame to define you? Have you ever remained silent just to keep another person comfortable? And if you dropped that baggage immediately, what would be different? If Rachel's story awakened something in you, if it made you pause and feel, then do one thing. Click like. Share this with someone still holding silence. And subscribe because there are more stories on the way. Tales of quiet strength, of restarting, of the kind of courage that does not require an audience, but a small light in which to grow. Because this was not merely a Western. It was a reminder. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up, take a deep breath, and say, I ain't yours.